Hey guys, welcome to the RAMZPAUL show. It is so good to be here today. It is Wednesday, March 12th. Busy day. We have this show. We got a lot of stuff to to talk about today. And if you want to be part of the show, you like the show, you want to support it, just kick in like $5 like you're having a coffee at Starbucks. There's a super chat. You can ask questions or comments. There's power chats right here, power chats. On Rumble has rants, and there's stream elements. I really do appreciate your support. It makes it possible, and thank you very much for that. And speaking of which, I got a power chat last night from Damien. It came in a little late, so sorry, Damien, but I'll read it now. Trump shouldn't be going after Massey, the only good person in Congress. Also, executive orders are worthless unless turned into law. Well, yeah, I mean, we got to continue the momentum, and I don't think Trump should go after Thomas Massey. I think that was a mistake. I think he misread the room on that. But thank you for your power chat. And again, here's the power chats if you have questions or comments. I really do appreciate it. Busy day today. Tonight, I'm excited. Wednesday night's always a highlight because we have the Wednesday wrap up with Z-Man, the famous Z-Man. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into Ronald Reagan and how it relates today and modern conservatism. You don't want to miss it. It's a 1 hour show at 7 p.m. Central to 8. And we should have a lot of fun. So be here tonight for that. I'm excited. I'm going to post that up here after the show. Because I'm doing the show tonight and I got to kind of prep for the show tonight, this show will just be an hour. So if you have questions, get them in during the first hour and I will get to them. So thank you very much on that. Oh, and if you haven't, join my Substack. It's in the description below. Every day I put out an article. Fridays I do a member-only video, if you can be part of that, I appreciate that. Plus, every Tuesday night we have a roundtable. Last night we had another roundtable. We discussed the good things and bad things about Trump's first couple of months, and I think it was a good show. Good community. It's not really a show. We get together and we discuss issues. A lot of good contributors. We're always getting new people join. Thank you for that. You add to the conversation. So, yeah, thanks for being here. It's a beautiful day here in the Ozarks. It's supposed to be in the low 70s today. It's beautiful sunny skies. Spring is coming soon, and pretty soon the leaves will bud and everything will turn green. So I'm looking forward to that. I like this time of year. All right. We will just get going into some of the stuff that is happening. And let's see here. I think the big news is there was a peace conference in Saudi Arabia, and it didn't involve Russia. So I don't know how you have a peace conference without both of the parties involved. But the United States met with Ukraine. I think it was trying to get Ukraine on board for what we want to do because President Trump has stated he wants to end this war. And Zelensky's been back and forth about willing to negotiate. And so I think Trump, read the riot act to Zelensky saying, you're going to negotiate. Otherwise, we're going to cut off military aid and intelligence to you. In fact, we did for a couple of days. And so Zelensky's government, although I don't think Zelensky was there, but his Ukrainian officials were in Saudi Arabia. And they met with the American officials. And let me just show you here. We'll just go over this real quickly. Trump's comments.
Look, we have to have peace. And I'm doing this. Money is one thing. We're going to lose. We spent $350 billion on this. But the big thing, human life. Thousands of people this week. Thousands of young soldiers died this week. Hundreds of people died in cities in Ukraine. and we got to get it stopped. It would have never happened if I was president, and it didn't happen. This was not going to happen. By the way, October 7th wouldn't have happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened. The Afghanistan, the way not that they left, but the way that they left, it looks so bad. Probably the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. That wouldn't have happened. A lot of things wouldn't have happened, but it is what it is. I think we're going to have a good time. I think we're going to have a good result in Saudi Arabia, meaning they're hosting the various talks, and we have a lot of good people going out there, and I think Ukraine's going to do well, and I think Russia's going to do well. I think some very big things could happen this week. I hope so. Look, we have.
All right. So that was the kind of a couple of days ago before the meeting in Saudi Arabia, where again, the Russians weren't there. It was the American representatives met with the Ukrainians to try to get them to the negotiating table. And Trump always repeats, it's not his fault. If he would have been president, this would have never happened. I don't know how much of that is true. Maybe. Then he brought October 7th and inflation and everything else. And I get it. This war is kind of a tar baby that he doesn't want to get involved in. But I fear that may be the case. There was something very similar in American history in the 1960s with Vietnam. JFK got us into Vietnam, but it was just special forces and advisors. And then after JFK was assassinated, Johnson, it fell on his administration. And he didn't really want a part of it, but he kind of got stuck with it, and he had to escalate, and it really brought down his administration. And I think there's a danger that will happen here with Trump. In the case of Johnson, LBJ, it was, okay, I want to get out of this, but I don't want to appear weak on communism. And then there was the domino theory. If South Vietnam should fall to the North Vietnamese, then Thailand would fall, Laos would fall, and so forth. It would be a domino, all the communism going forward. Now, we know that didn't happen, but does that sound familiar? We're hearing the same thing today about Ukraine, that if Russia is able to get a victory in Ukraine, then we have a new domino theory. Then Russia's going to invade Estonia, maybe Latvia, then they're going to invade Poland, and then eventually France, and then they're going to take over the world. It's nonsense, but it's the same type of thing. And I think Trump is in the similar position as LBJ, is he wants out of it, but he doesn't want to appear weak, and he wants to appear tough. I say forget that, Trump. Just get the hell out, cut the funding. The usual suspects will scream. They hate you anyway, but in a few months this will be forgotten. But it's drawing Trump in, and we're going to see a bit about that. Well, they had their meeting in Saudi Arabia, and what happened out of that meeting was this. And again, Russia wasn't there. So this was just between the Ukrainians and the United States. The United States has lifted the pause on aid to Ukraine, Walt said. U.S. also hopes Russia will agree to a 30-day ceasefire. So what happened in this meeting? Again, Russia wasn't there. Ukraine agreed to a ceasefire. In exchange, we are we're back to the Biden policy of giving money and weapons to Ukraine and intelligence. So we're kind of back where we started for. I was really excited about Trump, where we're just trying to cut ourselves out of this mess. But now Trump, because he's trying to thread the needle and he doesn't want to appear weak, he's giving money back to Ukraine. So we're back where we are starting from. And of course, Ukraine is okay now with a ceasefire because they are losing, and pretty badly. Recently, the Russians, they had a major victory in the Kursk region. That was a region of Russia Ukraine invaded. It was to be a propaganda thing that they control some Russian territory and Putin will fall and all that. But the Russians recently did a daring attack, including, it'd be a great movie, where they had 300 special forces, Russian special forces. They went in a gas pipeline that previously provided gas to Ukraine, through Ukraine to Western Europe. Zelensky had that shut down in January. And Russians thought, well, wait a minute, maybe we could use this gas pipeline to sneak soldiers in behind the rear lines of the Ukrainians. It was a really bold plan because you got to get the gas out, you had to pump oxygen in, and the pipeline is only like 4 feet in diameter. So unless you're a midget, it's hard to walk through. And they had to walk through a distance of about 7-8 miles through this pipeline. And it was just crazy. And then 300 special forces, they popped out on the other side and they surprised the Ukrainians. And it led to the whole collapse of the Kursk region. In fact, the Ukrainians, they were routed, they fled. A lot of people, Ukrainians, either died or surrendered. It was a huge victory. It was, in military history, it will go down as one of the most daring operations ever. It'd make a great movie. I hope they make a movie of it. Of course, if Hollywood makes a movie of it, they'll make the Russian commander a black female or something. But it was bold. It was a dangerous mission, but it worked. Kind of reminds me of the Trojan horse. You remember when they gave a gift and they had the troops secretly hidden in the Trojan horse? It was a fascinating plan. But anyway, Russia's winning. And this whole ceasefire thing with Russia is like, well, why would they want to do this now that they're winning? Yeah, of course, Ukraine is going to agree to it because they're in disarray. But what's the upside to Russia? And we'll get to that. But this is what came out. So Ukraine agreed to a 30-day or is it 60-day, 30-day ceasefire, where they can negotiate things. But see, ceasefires usually happen after negotiations. After you have a preliminary agreement, then you agree to have a ceasefire. What's the point of having the ceasefire if there's no agreements? You're just putting yourself at a disadvantage if you're winning the war. And so that's what came out of that yesterday. And here is Rubio talking about that. The ceasefire announcement. And again, there isn't a ceasefire because Russia has to agree to it. And I doubt they will. And we'll talk about that.
In a way that's enduring and sustainable. Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball's now in their court, and
that's the phrase. The ball's now in their court. They've that's a phrase that was written beforehand. We'll see this.
Again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
All right. So that's Rubio and Walz. They're talking about they convinced the Ukrainians to go in negotiations, which beforehand, to be fair, the Ukrainians said they would never negotiate with Putin. In fact, Zelensky put that in his constitution, but their constitution doesn't mean anything. So they got him to negotiate. So that's a good thing. And then there's the ceasefire bit. And the phrase, the ball's in Russia's court, let me just show you this, how that has been astroturfed. Everything seems to be so fake anymore. And here we have Secretary Rubio. The ball is now in Russia's court. The girl boss of the EU, Ursula, boy, she's useless. The ball's now in Russia's court. Some other girl boss, I think, in Europe. The ball is, as always, is in Russia's court. And Macron is saying now the ball is in Russia's court. So this is a talking point. that they've been all said to say. And so it is different. It is, the problem now is that I see is by making this offer and saying the ball's in Russia's court, they know Russia probably will not accept the ceasefire negotiations. And I'll explain why later. But then they can have the justification, oh, the war needs to continue. And as I wrote, I could just see in my mind Russia saying, no, we're not doing a ceasefire at this time. Until we agree to certain things, there's no reason to have a ceasefire. If we have a ceasefire, that will just allow Ukraine to rearm and regroup. They're on the heels right now. We invaded Ukraine for a reason, and they listed all the reasons. And we're not going to stop now. I know Ukraine wants us to stop, but no, until we get certain conditions, we're not going to agree to a ceasefire. I think that's going to be Russia's position. And then I could see Donald Trump on Truth Social, in all caps, maybe a few misspellings, saying, well, if Russia's not going to agree to this ceasefire, we're going to provide more weapons to Ukraine than has ever been seen in the entire world history. It's going to be big and beautiful, and Russia better watch out. And I could see Trump basically going down the LBJ route of escalating the conflict. Again, this is exactly what happened with LBJ in Vietnam. When Kennedy died, Vietnam got thrown on his lap, and LBJ didn't really want to be in Vietnam, but they were trying to do this, we got to have peace with honor in Vietnam. We can't lose this war. And LBJ said, I don't want to lose this war. I don't want to be the first president in U.S. history to lose the war. He said that privately. So it was an ego thing, and they wanted out of it because they knew it wasn't in the interest of America. But we didn't know what to do. We kind of got stuck in there. That's why we got the term quagmire. And then McNamara, I think his name was, his Secretary of State, they decided to escalate the conflict. Like, well, what we'll do, we'll put a bunch of troops in, and we'll really ramp up, and we'll crush the communists. And that's really what started the major Vietnam War, where a lot of troops were in Vietnam. And then, 50,000 troops later dead, it didn't really do anything. And we ended up pulling out anyway under Nixon. But it's a very similar situation. I fear Trump could get in with trying to escalate this to try to save face. And I think Trump is right. Trump always says this would have never happened if he had been president. And I hope he sticks with that line so he can wash his hands of this and just say, no, we're not going to provide aid. We shouldn't have been in this conflict in the first place. This is not a priority of the United States. We'll be happy to help mediate negotiations between the Russians and the Ukrainians, but we're not going to continue to fund this war. We don't have the money to do that. It's draining our resources. We need to get out of it. And we just need a clean break. And it seemed like just a week ago, we were seeing that clean break. We're pulling out. And if Europe wants to fight the war with Russia, that's up to them. But we're not going to be party of this. We want to establish good relations with Russia. We want to normalize that. And if Macron and Starmer, they want to send troops to Ukraine, well, have at it. But that's not our business. It really seemed like a great policy. I think J.D. Vance was helping to push that. And the trouble with Trump, though, he tends to flip-flop around a lot. And so he's trying to, I think, again, the same problem LBJ had of how to get rid of this conflict without appearing weak, right? And Trump is, he doesn't want to do that. So I could see him getting stuck in this conflict and escalating this once Russia says, no, we're not going to agree to a ceasefire. And part of the reason here, the history of why that won't happen. And let me bring this up for you guys to see. And thank you guys for joining. If you have questions or comments, there's Power Chats and Rants, and the Stream Elements has a feature, tip feature. So, all right, let's take a look here. Hang on here. Stream Elements has a new feature, so it's been kind of a pain. Here we go. All right. This is a short history of the Ukrainian peace negotiations. So this isn't the first time there's been a ceasefire in the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Remember, this started in 2014 when, under the Obama administration, Victoria Nuland and some neocons and Soros, they fomented a coup against a democratically elected president of Ukraine who was friendly with Russia. Victoria Nuland, she didn't want that, and the neocons, they wanted conflict with Russia, so they did this coup. And so what happened? This happened many times. There's been, in 2014, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers were encircled, and this was before the war. This is when Donbass was in a civil war. They said, okay, we're ready for peace, let's negotiate. And that's when you had the Minsk I agreement. So there's already been peace agreements, multiple ones that were broken. And then that again happened in 2015. They had to defeat the Ukrainians, so they wanted to stop the war. They wanted peace, and they had Minsk II. And then immediately afterwards, it was broken by the Ukrainians. And the Europeans, we had the audio of them saying that, no, Minsk II was just for a way for the Ukrainians to regroup. We never intended to honor the agreement. And again, this is before Russia invaded. This is when there was a civil war between the Donbass region, which are ethnic Russians that were fighting the Ukrainian government. Ukrainian government had a setback. They sued for peace. There was a ceasefire, and the Western governments admitted they never intended to honor the agreement of Minsk II. They just needed the pause so they could help rearm the Ukrainians. And then again, there was in Russian troops, remember in 2022, I remember this well. Right when the war started, Russian troops went all the way to Kiev. They surrounded Kiev. Remember that? And they didn't attack the city of Kiev, but they surrounded it. And it looked like the war was going to be over because there was negotiations in Istanbul. Russia met with Ukraine and they hammered out a peace agreement. But then immediately they broke the peace agreement due to the pressure of the United States, of Anthony Blinken. And we sent Boris Johnson there to tell Zelensky to renege on the agreement. And now we're seeing a similar situation. The Ukrainian army, they just had a huge defeat in Kursk. They're basically kicked out of that area now, the province, they call that. And now they want to sue again for peace and a ceasefire agreement. So from the Russian point of view, and I think let's look at the Russian response so far this morning, and I'm not surprised. And I think they said this diplomatically because they want to try to normalize relations with the United States. And they understand this is kind of a trap because they don't want to appear as the bad guys. And so far the response is that before there can be a peace, here it is. Moscow can take a flexible option to declare readiness for a truce, but only in compliance with certain principles. So Russia, they're being diplomatic. They're saying, well, we will agree to a truce, but we need certain conditions because we've had all these previous truces since 2014, and in every case, NATO and Ukraine has broke the truce, and in many cases they used the truce to rearm and to start the conflict again. So we don't want this to happen again. We've been down this road before. This isn't our first rodeo. So why should we agree to these terms? We're winning now. And well, yeah, convenient. You want us to stop so you guys can rearm. No, we don't want to do that. And so this is what he said. For example, we can say that before the truth, it is necessary to agree on the main principles of the final settlement and fix them in the framework agreement with the United States. And this typically is what happens. You don't call a ceasefire until you basically have an agreement of a basic agreement of how you want to do things. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Russia invaded for a reason. Oh, ceasefire is like, well, no, until we get what we want, or some things. And these basic principles should, of course, include demilitarization. Again, this was Russia. One of their reasons they attacked Ukraine was they didn't want Ukraine to be militarized and NATO troops in there, or they become part of NATO. So that was a big thing. So if there's going to be a ceasefire, first of all, Ukraine will have to agree to demilitarize, meaning get rid of most of their army. That'd be number one. Denazification. What they mean by that, I hate the term Nazis because they're not real Nazis, but they use some of the symbols. But these are the ultra-nationalist parties in Ukraine that have a real hatred of Russians. And what they're trying to do is ethnically cleanse Ukraine of ethnic Russians. They want to get rid of their language, make it illegal to speak Russian. They want to get rid of the Russian Orthodox Church. They've arrested priests. They want to, tear down the churches. And that element they want to get rid of. And the four regions, and so this means the Donbass and Crimea. Russia wants to keep that. And they want restrictions on military cooperation between the West and Ukraine. So basically, Russia's saying, okay, we will have a truce if you want, or a ceasefire, but it's got to be under these conditions that Ukraine demilitarizes, that you recognize that the Donbass is Russian territory, and so is Crimea, and you get your NATO advisors out of Ukraine. That's basically the agreement that those conditions will have to be agreed before they will have a ceasefire, which was their basic goal of the whole, what they call the special military operation in the first place. And Ukraine won't agree to this, so this is kind of a waste of time. So the whole purpose of the so-called ceasefire is try to get some moral authority saying, hey, we're the good guys, we want peace. It's Russia that doesn't want peace. And in order to get Trump to continue to fund the war effort. As I said, this is basically just putting us back where we were under Biden. And I hope Trump can resist that and we don't go down that road. But sadly, that is a potential of what could be happening. So, yeah, that is where we are with Ukraine at the moment. That wasn't, I'm hoping Trump could still resist this, and I want peace. But again, I could see us just resuming the old policy. We continually send billions of dollars to Ukraine, that corrupt nation, and they're going to lose anyway. It's just, do we want to spend all this money and prolong the war? And this is pretty crazy. A little bit of updates on concerning the war that's going on as we speak. Russia is currently winning, and hang on here. Here we go. Sudzha was the city, or it's kind of a small town. It's a town in the Kursk region that the Ukrainians captured last August. It's in Russia. This was again in 2024. The Ukrainians, they wanted to attack within Russia and capture a nuclear power plant as a bargaining chip. They failed to achieve their mission. and they sort of got bogged down in Russia. But they didn't retreat because of propaganda reasons. Zelensky wanted them to stay there. So if there was negotiations, they could swap that territory for like the Donbass or something. It was ridiculous. Russia was never going to agree to it. And it put them in a precarious position because it was sort of a bulge. So their flanks were kind of exposed. And when you have that situation, there's always a risk that you could be cut off. And that's what happened this week. The Ukrainians got cut off for a variety of reasons. One reason because of that gas pipeline attack. And so their whole army basically in that region collapsed. And just today, it was announced that the Ukrainian commander of the Northern Division, he's been relieved of command. So the Ukrainians are losing, and there's no reason that Russia should have to worry, should agree to a ceasefire at this point. So I doubt they will. And Russia, remember the Abrams tanks we sent there? That was going to be the game changer. That was all the propaganda. Well, Ukrainian forces are capturing intact U.S. Abrams tanks being abandoned in Ukraine. So this isn't even a destroyed Abrams tank. It was just when they got encircled, a lot of the Ukrainians, they threw down their weapons and they panicked. That's common in warfare since the beginning of time. If you start to get routed, their panic sets in and they lose command and control. So what we feared would happen did happen, that our tanks were captured by the Russians. And you could figure that was going to happen. And that did happen right there. All right. So that's kind of the update on the whole Russia thing here. All right, let's turn to a little bit of domestic policy. Let me just see where we are. I just want to make sure I got everything. Okay. All right, here we go. Turning to domestic news. We've had some pretty good domestic news recently. And here we go. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, this measures inflation, it fell to 2.8%. So they were expecting 2.9%. So inflation is actually falling. And again, the core CPI inflation fell to 3.1%. This marks the first decline in both headline and core CPI since July of last year. So this is good news for the Trump administration. Inflation seems to be cooling off, and I'm sure Trump will tout that. And the market should like that, because if inflation's going down and the economy, though, seems in trouble, there may be interest rate cuts. And if that happens, that will help the stock market and crypto. So, but good news on the inflation front. And the big issue that's become a big propaganda issue. It's kind of crazy, but let's take a look at this here. And this is the eggs. Egg prices plummet after Trump unveiled plan to reverse Biden's bird flu mess. And here's the price of eggs. It went skyrocketed up, and now it's really decreasing. And again, the price of eggs for the most part didn't have anything to do with inflation, meaning the value of the dollar. Inflation's a real thing, and that, it hit eggs too. But mostly egg prices went crazy because there was a bird flu, and the Biden regime, like everything, they panicked, they overreacted, and they ended up to, we got to cure the bird flu. It kind of reminded me of COVID. They went into a hysteria and they massacred millions of chickens. They killed millions of chickens. They demanded that farmers kill their chickens. So they did. And when you kill millions of chickens, well, where do eggs come from? And so we had an egg shortage. But the reason the price went up wasn't because of inflation. It was because there were fewer eggs now because, all these chickens were killed. Now, after killing millions of chickens, that didn't stop the bird flu at all. It was ridiculous. It was just a waste of money. And we had to pay more for eggs. But we're done with that nonsense now. So the policy of slaughtering the chickens is over. And so the chicken population, because, they reproduce quickly, is coming back. And they're back to laying eggs. So the egg prices should be falling. Although that doesn't really have much to do with inflation, even though that was the big one. But that's going to be good news too. Because you remember those old hags at the State of the Union address? They were planning to wave empty egg cartons. They didn't do that because that would have been a little bad optics for old women to do that. It reminds me of Stefan Molyneux and his empty egg carton. But it was all nonsense. So it wasn't caused by inflation, the price of eggs. It was caused by horrific policy by the government. All right. And some more good economic news. U.S. gas prices dropped for the third consecutive week. So this is the lowest. The gas prices is the lowest it's been in 4 years. And this is definitely good news. And obviously, Trump has opened up the energy markets. And I think if we could get normalized relations with Russia, we'll see the gas prices even go down further. So I think this is good news, what has happened there. And we got to be happy for that. So economically, things look pretty good. I know we had a rough time in the stock market the past couple of days, but that goes up and down. Crypto really crashed too. Let me see. I think it recovered a little bit yesterday, crypto. Let me see where it is now. Check it now. It's up a little bit. So it's recovered some. But a lot of it was because of the whole tariff uncertainty. But as things smooth out, I think that will get a little bit better. All right, turning on the woke stuff. We had a funny incident yesterday in Congress. There's this guy in Congress that wears a dress. He's one of these people that thinks if he wears a dress, it makes him a woman. It's ridiculous. But
Keating, also wonderful.
Here we go. So let's watch this.
The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
could you repeat your introduction again, please?
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply.
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman?
The standard is we don't call men in dresses women. So he referred to this guy wearing a dress as Mr. because that's what he is. If you have the XY chromosome, you have a penis, you make sperm, you're not a girl. This should be basic things that people knew when you were in junior high years ago. So we're no longer going to play this make-believe game that a guy wearing a dress is a girl.
Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. McBride, that's it. It's a man. He has the wig on and he's wearing a dress, but it's still a man.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency?
Have you no decency? They always use that line from the McCarthyism hearing. They keep trying to repeat things over and over. They're trying to act like they're shocked. No, a guy that wears a dress has no decency. Let's just be honest here.
I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this.
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Excellent. I wouldn't hold the hearing either. I mean, you got to introduce the man as who he is. And so that's good. We're not playing those games anymore of calling a man in a dress a woman. because it's not true. It's fake. And you got to live in truth. If you don't live in truth, what's the point going on? And if you want to, in your personal life, want to engage in fantasy, I don't really care, but don't try to force it on others. So if you want to put on a dress and pretend you're a girl in your home and you really think you're a girl, well, whatever. You could think you're a chicken as far as I'm concerned. I don't care, but don't force me to pretend you're a chicken or you're a woman. You're not. People are really tired of this, and it's kind of jumped the shark. And we saw this. This is interesting with this. I credit this guy for breaking the whole woke thing, and I think this was excellent. So here we go. Dylan Mulvaney's new book has been promoted by every major media outlet. It has. Dylan Mulvaney, he's that guy. He was always a fabulous or flamboyant homosexual. He was on The Price is Right. He's one of these guys, kind of like Alex Stein. They're out there in Hollywood. They exist. They just want to be famous. They don't really care about the issue. And Dylan Mulvaney, he played the role of an over-the-top flamboyant homosexual. And then he jumped on the trend like, oh, I can pretend I'm a girl now. And so he put on a dress. And then remember Bud Light used him as a spokesman or something. And eventually there's a boycott. It was a disaster. And that incident was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with all this woke bullshit. And they're trying to resurrect this guy. And so Dylan Mulvaney, I'm sure he had a ghostwriter write him a book. And the media has been promoting this. And it's number 539 in, in the books. And this is crazy bad. And here's all the People magazine is promoting him. He's New York Times promoting him. Rolling Stones promoted him. Glamour promoted him. And it's people just aren't buying this bullshit. They don't want to read this book. And it just shows how it's a bridge too far for people to try to pretend a homosexual wearing a dress is a woman. It's just a bridge too far, and people don't want to read it. And this guy, he has no talent. His whole thing is he's a flamboyant gay man that puts on a dress and demands you call him a girl, and people are getting sick of that. So that is what we are seeing now. So yeah, that is off. All right. We'll take a look at some more of the woke stuff here. You have this crazed woman. Oh, you guys saw my prep here. Hang on here. All right, let's listen to her. I guess it's a woman. It kind of looks trans. I'm not sure. I think it's a woman, though. I'm not sure.
Has anyone heard? CEO posters are being plastered everywhere with wanted signs. Yeah. Evidently, it looks like it's going to be open season on CEOs. God bless America.
Boy, what an ugly witch. So, she's like, was threatening Elon Musk here that there's going to be open season on CEOs. And of course, she's brainwashed. You look in her eyes, she's a cult type personality. She's this middle-aged hag that's ugly, that's never had an original thought in her mind. Yeah, social media has just put these people front and center and just see how horrible they are. And it is the left is their usual deranged stuff. And we've seen that with, and whatever you think about Elon Musk, some of the left in, I think it was in Seattle, they did a terrorist attack against Tesla at a dealership, and Trump, they're going to label this as domestic terrorism. They should. It is a terrorist attack because it's done for political reasons. You disagree with someone's political view, so you firebomb their property. That's definition of terrorism. That'd be like you don't like, say, black, so you firebomb a black church. That's terrorism. It's the same thing here. And I hope they throw these people long time into prison. There's probably a good chance there's some transgender or something because that's very popular up there. But hopefully they will get into that and they will crack down on that. This guy had a good breakdown of really what this whole, let me show you guys here. The understanding of the left-wing mind and how they're broken. And this guy's a former liberal. And I just wanted to go through this because I think he made some really good points here. And let me just see if I got any super chats or power chats. All right. Okay. Here we go. And this is, I think that the right is fundamentally misunderstanding what is behind the current attacks on Elon. I've seen a lot of the rhetoric around how liberals just want to see everything burn. This is incorrect. It's actually worse. They believe they are doing true good in the world and that torching a Tesla creates an overall net positive. Yeah, they are. If you look at the woke left, again, it's religion without God. They don't believe in God. In fact, they hate God, but they're like a Jim Jones cult members. They're a true believer. To get to this point, you have to fully believe a left-wing narrative about anyone successful, and that is this. If you're successful, the only way you could have gotten there is by taking advantage of someone else. Again, that's communism is based on envy. Being successful is akin to being a tyrant, and tyrants must be punished. And this is how they are. And so they look at things in very good versus evil, and Trump is evil. He's a devil. If you support him, you need to be destroyed and murdered or whatever. This is how crazy these people get. And it's different than the old school liberals where they debated about economic policy or something. These people have gone totally insane. And you saw that in that lady that was just addressed, I showed. She's off in the head. And this is how they are. They're very wicked people. And they're insane, and we shouldn't tolerate them. It's just simple as, if they had the power, they would kill you. These are the same people that, like in Cambodia, would murder millions of people. These are the same type of people. They are crazy, and we need to understand this is what they're about. And it's we got to take it seriously, but this is where we are right now. All right, and we'll take a look at some of these crazies. Let me just go through here. And we have the video of when J.D. Vance was and his family were confronted by protesters yelling at his little daughter. Oops, sorry about that. It's not on that one. Where is this here? Bring this up here.
So we're forcing both the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Right here, wrong saddle.
Exactly. They certainly invaded Ukraine in 2022. But there needs to be a settlement. Ma'am,
They are the aggressor every time.
ma'am, I understand that that's your view, and certainly they have, and certainly I have condemned, ma'am, please, you're interrupting. I'm speaking with you, and I'm trying to be respectful. I have condemned the invasion, but I've also condemned the potential. That is the policy of the administration. And I've talked to you guys now.
Yeah, it's not even worth talking to these people. They're just a cult, and they're crazy. They can't listen. They just are in their cult mindset. It is bizarre, but this is what it is. And they believe whatever their TV tells them. The same people, they were all into the COVID that was going to kill everyone. And if you didn't wear your mask, you're going to kill grandma. And unless everyone took the vaccine, it was going to kill everyone. Remember that? And they're all on board with climate change and Black Lives Matter, everything, because they believe all the lies. And let me just, kind of go back in time and look at some of these lies here. We'll take a look at a couple here. And here was the girl boss of the EU. This is in 2022. She was explaining the state of the war with Russia.
Russia's financial sector is on life support. We have cut off 3/4 of Russia's banking sector from international markets. Nearly 1,000 international companies have left the country. The production of cars fell by 75% compared to last year. Aeroflot is grounding planes because there are no more spare parts. The Russian military is taking chips from dishwashers and refrigerators to fix their military hardware because there are no semiconductors anymore. Russia's industry is in tatters.
This was all a lie, as we've seen. They even ran stories that Russia didn't have rifles. They were using shovels and they had no industry. And it was actually the opposite. Europe doesn't have any industry. Russia does. But they were promoting this propaganda. Again, they like to promote a narrative thinking that it will become true.
And it is the Kremlin that has put Russia's economy on the path of oblivion. That is the price for Russia's and Putin's trail of death and destruction. And I want to make it very clear. The sanctions are here to stay. This is time for us for resolve and not for appeasement. This has to be very clear.
So they were just pushing, this was back in 2022, I believe it was, that the Russian military is taking chips from dishwashers and refrigerators to fix their military hardware because they ran out of semiconductors. Russia industry is in tatters and its economy on life support. That wasn't the case. That's not the case. That was all a lie. But people believe all this propaganda. And you would think it'd be strange for these people now that Russia's winning, because their media and their governments have been telling them for 3 years that Russia's losing. They're losing 1 trillion men. They're losing every battle. Putin's dying of cancer. They're about to have revolution in Russia. Ukraine's winning glorious victory after glorious victory. And now all of a sudden they hear that Ukraine is losing. It's like, well, wait, what the hell happened here? And they just shamelessly lie. You would think people would eventually say, well, wait a minute, people aren't really saying the truth to me. But I guess not. I guess not. And a lot of people, they're true believers. They will believe whatever the government tells them. All right, a couple other things that is kind of pissing off other countries like Hungary. We'll take a look here. This has to do with oil. Russian oil has stopped flowing to Hungary via the Druzhba pipeline. The reason is an attack by a Ukrainian drone on a measuring statement. And this is pissing off Hungary. So, it's not Russia that's really suffering. It was Europe, the rest of the Europe, that was in tatters because of this war. Again, the left, it's usually the opposite of what they're saying. And the protests against J.D. Vance in Ukraine, a lot of this is astroturfed. And this is from the U.S. Homeland Security. The U.S. Agency for International Development, that was a corrupt agency that was spending your tax money on all these left-wing causes, has been implicated in funding a Ukrainian operation, Molfar, which labeled Vice President J.D. Vance and other U.S. and public officials as foreign propagandists aligned with Russia. So what happened is your tax money was going to foreigners to label our people Putin propagandists. And this is what they were doing. USA funded Ukrainian group that smeared Vance. And this is how shutting off USAID has shut down a lot of this nonsense. And again, a lot of this was pretty fake, but this is where it is. Let's see here. The other news we got yesterday, and I don't know if you can read too much in this. I heard this was a big victory for Trump concerning Greenland. Let's see here. Center-right party wins most votes in Greenland parliamentary election as Trump seized control. In Greenland, they only got 56,000 people. That's almost like half the size of the small city of Fayetteville, Arkansas. So they don't have many people. But I guess the party that they do want independence, but it's not necessarily to be part of the United States. But it may happen because Trump told Greenland, hey, if you want to be part of the United States, we will welcome you. So this was touted as a success for Trump. We will see. I'm a little skeptical this will really happen, but this is a potential that it could happen. Getting back to USAID, obviously things were getting kind of strange there. They're trying to hide the evidence of all their criminal behavior. A senior USAID official instructed staffers to shred and burn documents today. USAID official tells remaining staffers, shred and burn all your documents. So they're trying to hide all the shenanigans that went on in that agency. Boy, that was crazy if you think about it. That was really crazy, the stuff that went on there. So, all right. Well, I'm going to wrap up today. It's been an hour. I'm going to wrap up here in an hour. Tonight, we have the show with Z-Man. It's going to be great on Reagan. Please attend. And if you have questions, send them in beforehand. How we do this is we try to do the show, then at the end of the show, we'll take your super chats and rants. And if you like what we're doing with Z-Man, if you want the show to continue, please consider throwing in $5 or whatever, ask a question. We split the super chat money. We appreciate your support. So I'm excited. That's tonight at 7 p.m. I look forward to seeing you there. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.